Hello and welcome to Waypoint, the AirMed&Rescue podcast, your place to hear all the latest insights from professionals in the airborne special missions sector. I'm Junior Editor Oliver Cuenca. In this episode, I'll be speaking to Paul Daly, Superintendent and Officer in charge of the Western Australia Police Airwing, about how he and his team keep the peace across this enormous territory. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, welcome. No worries at all. Nice to be here.
So just to start off, I was thinking that maybe we could talk about you for a bit. So tell me a little about yourself. Did you grow up in Western Australia or?
Yep. No, I was born and bred here. Just turned 50 this year. So had a little bit of experience in the state and been a police officer for 30 of those years.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So and what led you to get into the police air wing?
Look, I was asked to come here. The other superintendent before me had retired. There was a vacancy. I have I guess a different skill set with project management, emergency management, and there was a need at the time to implement a drone program in amongst our pre-existing fixed wing and rotary wing fleet. So the Deputy Commissioner said, would I be prepared to do some time here? Now, I'm not an aviator by any stretch of the imagination, so very, very rapid learning curve. But here I am 2 years later and, from my own bias point of view, we're kicking goals.
So, you had a history with drones before you had any experience with sort of standard aircraft then?
Yeah, for full disclosure, I'm a drone pilot and I have been for probably the last 10 years, I guess. But certainly that was a different catalyst that caused me to get qualified. I just knew drones would be a big disruptor somewhere along the pipeline. Had never any dreams that it was actually going to be me leading the charge on a drone program, but here I am. But yeah, drones themselves, when they started to appear on the landscape, was like, this has got some real good applications to law enforcement and a multitude of other industries, but something that sort of piqued my interest. And so I took some leave. I got my license off my own back just because I thought I'd rather get it and not really have any sort of thought as to how I was going to apply it. But yeah, here I am a decade later doing these sorts of things.
Nice. Yeah, well, so it's all sort of integrated into one singular unit, the drones and the fixed wing and the rotorcraft and everything. Because a lot of places, I think, still are tentative about treating drones as aircraft in the same way that like helicopters or whatever are.
Yeah, it's I guess that comes from your background. If you are a Joe citizen and you think of planes and helicopters as aircraft, but you can go down to the local JB Hi-Fi electronics store and buy a drone as a toy, then yeah, I can understand how that nexus is reached. But really, when you consider in the aviation sense and the way the regulator here likes to view them, they should all be subject to their maintenance programs, the way they're flown, the deconfliction between crewed and uncrewed. So it's probably critical that if industry views them as aircraft and treats them as aircraft, and kind of a really interesting point in history where we have had flight for a long time, but now we have unmanned flight. How do we integrate that? We need to bring it along the same safety levels, I guess, that we've treated our manned aircraft with.
Yeah, I mean, what's the situation with regulators and everything? Because a lot of countries at the moment, they're dealing with roughly the same thing, which is that the regulators don't generally trust people to fly them beyond visual line of sight. Is that the case in Western Australia or Australia as a whole? Or?
No, not necessarily. I think that even in the last couple of years, I've noticed a huge shift in the way the regulators, their attitudes, thoughts, perceptions around this. Now, Western Australia has a huge backyard, as you can imagine. We have plenty of space out there where there is nothing. There's a lot of mining, a lot of resource sector where they can use these in relative safety because there's absolutely nothing flying above them. So I guess we're kind of privileged in that position to be able to use this technology in certain applications. From a law enforcement perspective, though, we're not where people aren't, we're where all the communities are. So that makes it really challenging for us to want to integrate these into our operations and then trying to convince the regulator that we need to be able to do it for the right reason. So that's been my challenge. In my spare time, I chair the national working group of all the police departments in Australia. And as a collective voice, we are working with the regulator, getting that shared understanding their view of safety and how that has to be first and foremost, but then also getting that social license around the regulator giving us certain privileges because we need to be fighting crime on behalf of the community. The pub test is that community expect us to do something, and if drones make it more efficient, more effective, gather evidence, enable us to solve crimes faster, and do it in a manner that's safe and compliant, well, there's really one direction we need to go on that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd love to talk a bit more about like how you police Western Australia and all that. But first, I thought, tell me a little bit about what kind of aircraft you use and where they're based. I know that a lot of them are based in Jandakot, but
Yeah, so WA Police has two bases. One is in Jandakot, which is in the Perth metropolitan area, and that's really where 80% of our population reside. Due to the sheer size of our state, we also have another secondary transport aircraft, Pilatus PC-12 aircraft, stationed in Karratha. Now, if you looked at a map of WA, Karratha kind of sits just a little bit above halfway up, and that services the northwest of the state. We have transporters down here, a PC-12 aircraft as well. We also utilise a Cessna 208 Caravan. That's a really good weapon of choice for us as a surveillance aircraft. That's got the 380X Sapphire FLIR on it. A lovely bit of military grade stuff that allows us to record activity. And the weather we have down here pretty much allows us to fly that thing almost year round. We don't get extremely low cloud cover often, and we do have plenty of sunshine. So that's a really nice bit of kit. And then we have been fortunate enough, it's been some years in the planning and it's all come to fruition now, and I'm the lucky one to implement two brand new H145D3 Airbus helicopters, which I refer to as the Swiss Army knife of our fleet. They pretty much do everything we need them to do and then some. So, and then the last component to that list is the drones. So we have about 85 drone pilots scattered across the state. We have a multitude of different drones depending what your specific mission is that you're looking for. And we deploy them wherever. We're always looking to exploit opportunities. There's new technology coming on the market all the time. So we like to position ourselves in a spot where we can exploit that.
Yeah, so like you touched on already, Western Australia obviously has an area of, I think, 2.5 million square kilometres or roughly thereabouts. And as you say, most of the population, 80%, I think you said, is all down in the Perth region in the southwest. So, and the rest is largely empty, obviously not completely empty. You've got the mining companies, you've got various, native groups and things like that. But so how do you manage to police the whole state? Do you cover the whole state? Because I know that like some aviation operators will be like, oh, we won't go to the far north, but
No, not at all. We cover the whole state. We will go anywhere that's required. Logistically, that presents some challenges. However, we have our fuel caches all over the state, so if we have to do our refuels along the way, our PC-12s and our helicopters integrate. We can do off-wing refueling, if you like, so we can send a PC-12 out to meet the helicopter, refuel from that, and send it off to get more. We have fuel trucks that we can send with it, depending where the area operations are. And really, it's just a logistical exercise as to who needs to go where and why, but we will do it. That's our mandate. I have a commissioner who has given an undertaking that the people out in the far reaches of our state deserve and expect just the same level of service as those in the metropolitan area where all our specialist units are. So really it's a non-negotiable, and it can be a very fine juggling act sometimes, particularly when that unpredictable nature of policing hits us and there's all sorts of things going on at once. Then it becomes a real challenge for my operations managers to work out who's going where and when.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it sounds really technically complex, especially the refueling aspect and everything. But so you say the unpredictable nature of policing. What sort of missions do you find yourself mainly responding to, and does it change dramatically between the rural and the urban areas?
Not really. Anywhere you put people together, there's going to be conflict. So in my 30 years, and I have been fortunate enough to travel around the world, invariably I find the same problems are experienced everywhere. There's friction between people for whatever reason set them off. People still hurt each other. People still do silly things. People get affected by drugs and alcohol and do things they later regret. That is a common theme across. So WA is not immune to any of that, but certainly our specialists, our major crime division, homicide division, squad, those sort of guys, they'll have to go to the far reaches of the state because the same crimes are occurring in the metro as they are in the regions.
Okay.
So there's nothing spectacular or anything different. There's still theft, there's still assaults, there's still serious crime. All of those sorts of things happen. So it demands a response.
Yeah, but one thing I was kind of thinking about as well is obviously these large rural areas kind of give opportunities potentially, I suppose, for criminals to hide, if they wanted to. And I imagine the aviation team plays quite a big role in helping to track down people like that. That'd be correct?
When required. I probably should need to expand a little bit. We have police scattered all over the state as well. So the larger centres in regional WA, they're larger police forces. In the smaller towns, there might be 2 or 3 police there. So having been a country copper myself for a decade or nearly, I'd almost counter-argue that the crooks don't actually get the luxury of hiding in regional WA. Your local police pretty much know who is in their backyard, and those randoms that turn up is almost like that first thing on the spider senses to go, this is a bit out of place, what's going on? So no, I think the bigger metropolitan cities is where you're going to find that anonymity and better ability to hide. Out in regional WA, the what we call the bush telegraph, that communication, it is alive and well, and the locals know exactly who's in their backyard, and with the trust of the community, they'll tell you everything.
Oh, well, fair enough. That's great to hear, though.
We enjoy a very high community satisfaction in WA. We understand it was Sir Robert Peel that said, without the consent of the people, the police are nothing. But certainly here, I'm really proud of my community in WA. They're absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely. I'm guessing with such a large fleet that you've got, you probably also get involved in search and rescue and things like that. Disaster response.
Yeah, legislatively, the WA Police are the organisation that's mandated to command and control search and rescue both on land and sea. So we're what's called the HMA, or the Hazard Management Agency. We have combat agencies like our fire department, our emergency, St John's ambulance, and those sort of things that can assist us. We also have a huge volunteer workforce, the State Emergency Services under the Department of Fire and Emergency Services, who man both the boats on the coast and the volunteers out in the bush. So we are mandated with searching for lost people, people in distress, missing people, but we call upon those resources to do it. And one of those we will do with the airwing. So we have, like I mentioned earlier, the H145s, state-of-the-art sensors and everything to go on it. So if we can put that into the area and go looking, we certainly exploit those opportunities as well. But yeah, we'll use aircraft and drones as well.
Yeah, and is that coordinated as part of a larger operation? You have an operations centre that you refer to on that sort of thing?
Yeah. So we have the for the bump and grind day-to-day business that rolls in, we have a state operations centre that will manage that workflow that calls for assistance. If you get a big search, someone's gone missing or a boat's overdue or whatever, then that will break apart and it's a standalone incident with its own command control, incident controller, and all the structure built around it. So yeah, you'll have your common calls for assistance, and then some things can break out to be a bigger, requiring incident management, which involves structure and command and control.
Cool. Yeah. So you mentioned a few pieces of exciting technology that you're keeping on board. Would you mind going into a bit more depth, the kind of equipment and kit that you're currently using, and whether you're looking to get any more new stuff in the future?
Oh yeah. So both the helicopters and a couple of our fixed wing have got the FLIR, the 380X Sapphires, and that's your optical sensor. So that's not only just your camera lens for normal vision, but also the infrared, the inverted infrared. So it allows that nighttime operations, looking for heat fingerprints or heat signatures. Sorry. And that's really our bread and butter. So a lot of our flying now is looking for stolen motor vehicles or people. I think what you could essentially do is strip it back to the bare basics. We're a flying camera. We're an optical sensor. We gather data and we ingest that into the system for decision making. So yeah, those FLIRs, we integrate them with our automatic number plate recognition cameras that we have scattered around the state as well. So if we're looking for particular cars, we can recognise number plates. This is not the dark arts. This is quite simple technology. And of course, when one of those pings on a camera and we've got an aircraft overhead, we're very quickly over the top. And like anything, once we've got you in our crosshairs, we're not going to let go. The ground units will eventually close in that circle around you. Some of the other bits we have, both of the helicopters have that night tracker beam, or a night sun, if you like. So if we have to illuminate things at night, we can. That's also got a green laser designator on board, so our special ops, or indeed our guys in the aircraft, when they're working under night vision conditions, can use that as a target identifier or a point of reference. And they're pretty much the two things that we will engage with for the assets. We do keep radio repeaters, the ability to bounce radio signals up and further down the road so that we can be a source of communications to an isolated instance requiring or needing to facilitate radio communications, and also the transporters. So even though it's just a plane that flies people, it also flies things. So when we need to move resources around the state that aren't necessarily fixed at the airwing, we can do that as well. It's a pretty simple operation when you pare it back.
Yeah. Well, simple in some ways, but also complex in others, you know?
Well, I think, yeah. I guess when you start digging into my tactical flight officers, their tactics and the pilots that we use, extensive training and extensively trained. My pilots, ex-military, they're very, very good at what they do. My tactical flight officers, when they're not on a job, they're training, getting as much experience, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, that side of it's technical, but I guess the hunting that we do is quite simple.
So, like, tell me a bit about the training. What does that sort of involve on a regular basis?
So, for a tactical flight officer, which is my police officers in the back of the aircraft or as mission commander at the front, they walk through the front door here not knowing anything. So they've gone through a basic selection where I'm looking for people that are trainable, that can perform under pressure, that are neither over the top or wallflowers, if that makes sense, kind of middle of the road. But really, it's that trainability. Can this person sit down? Will they take some feedback and take that on board? Will they apply what they've learned for future use? So we have a fairly, it's a 3-day basic course where we can elicit a lot of that under some stressful conditions and see how they go. And it's been a fairly successful program here in that, well, I can hand on heart say all my TFOs are fantastic. So they'll start off walking in here, not knowing a thing. And it's modular in their lessons. So we build them up into the various skills, starting with the ground handling control, how to operate around an aircraft, how to move an aircraft, working them into the aircraft and then onto the sensors, how to operate the FLIR at daytime, nighttime. Then our rescue crew modules where we actually helocast them out into water and they recover people under duress. As you can imagine, WA, if we're not looking at the water, we're in the water. It's just that type of environment. And then eventually they'll work themselves up into a winch instructor, hoist operator, where they're bringing people up and down the wire. And at that level, they become qualified rescue crewman, winch operator. And then I have a bank above that. They're constables as well that are instructors. So they've done all of that. They've got their time, they've got their tickets, and they're able to do the recencies and competencies required for the TFOs to remain current in their skill set. So that kind of gives me my business continuity. My instructors stay there, and every 8 years we do have tenure here. So my TFOs, and I guess some people will say, well, that's ridiculous. You spend all this time training people up and then you throw them out after 8 years. That is what it is. That's the world we live in. And so so my instructors they're continually training. We're continually building our bank of TFOs. The pilots, they pretty much come ready-made, particularly out of the military. And I have one that's come from a rescue helicopter base. So they're a no-brainer. They just get exceptional training. They're well-drilled, well-disciplined, and they're a fantastic addition.
So a bit of a tangent now. Have you had any, what is the most memorable mission that you have had as a unit lately, or that you can remember, I should say?
Oh, wow. We get results every day. I mean, even as we speak, a couple of hours ago, we tracked an offender on foot that had fled from a stolen car onto the roof of a house where he thought he was absolutely safe and never going to be found. And then, you bring the units in and the guy's taken into custody. That sort of is a bread and butter job for us, but that gives us just as much pride and satisfaction as the bigger jobs where you go out searching, looking for people and you find them. Yeah, I get you caught me on the hop, and they're very varied as well. Certainly, if you found someone lost, they're in the bush and they're not doing too well, and that elation of being able to find them, get them to medical aid, and knowing they're going to be fine, we do that more often than you think. There are outstanding jobs when we have a drug importation of 2 tons of cocaine that's been brought in from another part of the world, and you end up taking those crooks in, and it's your surveillance work that's done it. That's a different kind of elation. There's a lot that we do that I would say there's not something that I go, wow, that was just the best job ever. I think there's heaps. We've had some hikers that got themselves into real difficulty on it's not a mountain, but it's a pretty big hill, I guess we'd call it, down in where they found themselves. There's no going back up, and there was certainly no going further down. They were literally stuck. And my team were able to fly down there in the new helo, were able to winch down and bring them all home, back onto ground. Brilliant. Can't ask for more than that. But they're a very humble mob, and certainly I'm the one that'll stand on the rooftops and shout how good they are. It's not me doing the work, but for them, that's just their business. That's what they're trained to do, and when it's time to perform, they execute. So yeah, there's lots all the time. It's exciting, and it's a big crystal ball. You just don't know what you're going to get and when.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's when you get a good outcome, I think, is probably the thing we look for most.
Would you say that's your sort of driving passion behind doing the work that you do?
Oh, as a police officer?
Yeah, well,
without a doubt.
Yeah,
without a doubt. That I found my calling 30 years ago. I sort of joined in on a bit of a whim and thought, oh, I'll have a crack. It was a good opportunity. There was a big recruiting drive, and I found myself the diversity. I'm certainly not at a desk pushing paperwork from left to right. And here I am, buddy management, but I still got to get up and walk the floor and see everybody. But that what's coming next, a lot like a nurse in an ER department. What's coming through next? This is a challenge. How are we going to manage that one? So problem solving on the fly, that is police work. I think an understanding that somebody in whoever it is you're dealing with is not going to be happy, whether it's the person who just got punched in the face, the victim, or the person you're about to lock up because they threw the punch. Someone's not happy. So there's never going to be a happy outcome all the time. But getting the best result for the people that need it is something that was a big driver for me. And variety, there's over 58 Gazette jobs in our police force. You couldn't do a year at each before you'd retire. So certainly there's never a reason to be stuck in a dead-end job. Yeah, and it sounds a bit cliche, but the camaraderie amongst the people and the dynamic nature of our job and the transient nature, you're working with people 20 years ago and all of a sudden you meet up at a job, they're doing something else, you're doing something else, and you're old friends again. You meet, hey, what's going on? So there's some really fun and likable aspects to our job that kind of balances out some of the not so nice stuff, body parts and violence and all the rest of it. But yeah, I've just found my calling, and this is me. I love it. Well,
that sounds fantastic. Just one more question to sort of finish up, really. If someone was looking to, say, a young person was looking to get into police aviation as a career, what advice would you give them?
Get a good grounding in police work. You need to understand the business on the ground before you try and assist it from the air. It sounds glamorous, but it involves a lot of hard work. There aren't hundreds of jobs going. So if you are going to fixate on to, I just want to do that, either be prepared to spend a long time waiting, or when you do get an opportunity, you might not get in. Everyone needs a plan B, C, D. So it's incredibly rewarding. I say we've got the best seat, the best front row seat to the biggest show in town. Because if it's happening on the ground, we're in the air over and above it, and we can do our business. But it's a niche skill. It certainly gives you all the tickets, all the skills and experience that allows you to flourish in that aviation industry. Because it's not just police. It could be a rescue helicopter or fire and emergency services. They have their helicopters and various rescue organisations around the world even. That gives you a very, very niche skill, but it's difficult to get into. Jobs don't come up all that often. I only have 25 tactical flight officers with me here, and we service all of Western Australia, and every 8 years or so they're turning over. So it's not like there's every year you're going to run a course and you're going to get lots of people in. But if aviation's your passion and you're a police officer and you're fortunate enough to do it, there's like no place like it. I certainly don't have a staff or an HR problem here. Everyone is highly motivated. Everyone wants to come to work. They all want to fly. My biggest challenge sometimes is just pulling on that chain and saying, I've got to balance this against the budget, fellas. And so, it's just not unlimited flight time. So, what a nice problem to have.
Yeah, that sounds like a really nice problem to have. Well, I think that's pretty much everything I've got to ask you. But is there anything you feel like I could have touched on that I perhaps haven't, that you'd like to talk about?
Well, there's that bit around the drones, and maybe to explore that a little bit more, because that's a really exciting thing for us. I have a commissioner that is extremely pro technology, anything resources that he can put in the hands of the police to assist them do their job. He is, let's go for it. And so that mandate came in where he wanted to introduce drones into the WA Police, particularly the drone in the box style arrangement here, where that's the intent of that is when a call for assistance comes in, we can have a drone flying before police are even dispatched. So it gives us a couple of things. As police, the first thing you need to know is what's going on. You've got somebody who's in distress calling you, I need police here now, but you don't have sometimes a real understanding of what's happening. Or you have a distorted view of what's happening. In your mind, it could be a horrific car accident. In somebody else's mind, it's just a fender bender. I don't know why you're getting upset. So that's situational awareness. We crave that. We never ever want to have a situation where police return back to the office and go, would have been good to have known that prior to turning up. Or I wish I'd known there was a great big dog on the back of that fence prior to me jumping over it. So technology, particularly these drones now, allow us to insert ourselves in that time period between call for assistance and call of getting there. Now, this isn't new. We're not being the ones to go, hey, we're the first in the world. And certainly Chief Roxana Kennedy out of Chula Vista Police Department were the pioneer in this one, in this space, where they had their drone as a first responder program. We're just looking at implementing that over here. But you can imagine a small area like Chula Vista versus the state of Western Australia, which for all intents and purposes, California, Oregon, Washington, most of BC and Texas, we got some challenges, right? So we're just about to kick that off and incorporate the drone in the box. We have 80 pilots using a variety of different drones, from the little Avadas that will fit in your hands to the bigger M350s. Just getting my team trained up on the Flight Cart 30, which is a sub 150 kilo drone, moving stuff around. We're looking at fixed wing VTOLs, which is your plane style drone, that wingspan and all the rest of it. So there's lots of exciting things, and the rest of the country is sort of looking at what WA is doing to watch and learn. You know, sometimes there's hooks in going first. You stuff things up and you have to backtrack 2 steps to keep going forward. But also, you know, there's some exciting times as well. So that features heavily in our aviation program. Planes, helicopters, been around for 50 years now. The airwing's been flying that long. Drones has sort of been about 3 or 4 years. And working with the regulator I touched on earlier to be able to progress permissions or privileges, if you like, for law enforcement to be able to do their job. Just to give you a case in point on that one, April last year, CASA, which is our Civil Aviation Safety Authority, same as your CAA, they issued the first exemption we've been working with them to allow us to fly beyond visual line of sight from outside into a premises looking for whatever the threat or the thing is that we want. It sounds a bit crazy. You think, oh, you're the cops, you should be able to do that. No, the regulator says that you're not allowed to fly a drone beyond visual line of sight. And certainly we don't want you flying within 30 metres of people. That's the standard operating rule. However, after working with them and being able to satisfy the regulator that we can do it safely, they've issued that piece of legislation. We can now do it. And we went operational, our first flight in December, so only about 3 weeks ago, resulting in a successful apprehension and safe apprehension, I can't stress that enough, of 3 people. So all had firearms, one had a replica firearm, and all were able to be taken into custody by our TAC teams without so much as a flashbang or a door getting kicked in. The drones make life so much safer for everybody. We tend to lean on the fact that it's us that are being protected, because we'd rather a drone get shot or hit rather than a police officer. But certainly from the other side of the house too, we don't always get it right, but a drone will at least let us know where that person is and what's going on in a safe manner. So that's the exciting stuff, and the regulator relationship now is very healthy, and we're progressing those sorts of things as well. So keeping up, I think, is probably the term. The FAA in the US, Transport Canada in Canada, are perhaps a little bit more liberal with the way they're doing their business. But again, that's that other regulators on the sideline looking in, watching, waiting, learning, and then implementing back here. So there's some real exciting opportunities. But I guess it's going to be tempered by the fact we've got to do it in a manner that's going to look after everybody. Yeah. You don't want a drone falling out and doing something catastrophic, and that'll just set everybody back a long way.
That's fair. Yeah, completely understand. Well, yeah, that sounds really exciting. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me again. It's been really nice talking with you.
Good.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Yeah, no worries at all, mate. I'm always happy to talk aviation. 2 years ago, you would have got about a sentence out of me, but now I know a little bit more. We're okay. But yeah, it's kind of unique. when you're the biggest jurisdiction in the world, and it does come with logistical challenges. The tyranny of distance does bite sometimes, but that's half the fun, right? Problem
Oh,
solving.
absolutely. And that's it for this episode of Waypoint. Thank you again to Paul Daly for coming on the show today. Don't forget to subscribe on your favourite platform to catch more upcoming episodes. And in the meantime, be sure to check out the Airmen&Rescue website for more exciting content. Until then, safe flying.